Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Bebo. In this video, we're going to take a look at finding the new amount after a percent change. So essentially, you're given a starting value. They tell you it increases or decreases by a certain percentage, and you're asked to find that new value. So we're going to take a look at 4 examples total, 2 of which are actually going to be related to discounts or markdowns, as well as markups, which is something that I know for my students we will see in a later lesson, but percent change does apply to a lot of different areas within this percent unit. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The nice thing about these questions is that there are multiple ways that you can solve them. We actually could solve all 4 of these problems that we're going to go through in this video using one step. I'm not going to show that necessarily in this video. I will show how to do that in my discount and even my tax videos. So I'll show it in later percent videos. This one we're just going to focus on the basics, which for most of us is going to be solving it in 2 steps. Now, you also have a choice on, whether 1 step versus 2 steps. You also have the choice of using a proportion or an equation. To remind ourselves on what those look like, our proportion says A over W equals P over 100. Remember, A is the part, W is the whole, P is the percent, and then percents are always over 100, so that's why our percent's over on that side of our proportion. Or you're welcome to use the equation A equals P times W, where again, A is the part, P is the percent written as a decimal, and then W is the whole. So I'm going to show how you can use both methods to solve this first question and even the second question. And then for the third and fourth question, I'm just going to use the equation, because using the equation in these types of problems, it is actually a lot quicker. But I know for some of my students, they feel very comfortable using the proportion, and I want them to still be able to use a method that they feel comfortable with. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this first one. It says 1,500 people increased by 35%. That 1,500 people is our starting value, the original value. So that is going to be W in this case. And then obviously our percent is that percent that's given to us in this problem. Sorry about that. I was having some technical difficulties with getting that to actually line up with what we're seeing on the screen here. It should be fixed now. So as I was trying to underline, 1,500 people is going to be our W. That's our original, our starting value. And then that 35% is that percent increase. So that's going to obviously represent the percentage within our proportion. So when I set up our proportion, we're going to have A over 1,500 is equal to 35 over 100. So again, we're trying to find A, the part, the amount that actually is representing that 35% increase. Because right now we only know the percentage. We actually want to know the number of people that are represented by that 35% amount. So we're going to do our cross products. And so to do our cross products, as a reminder there, you're going to do A times 100. We're going to do 1,500 times 35. 100 times A is just going to be 100A, and then 1,500 times 35 is going to be 52,500. And then we have one last step, which is going to be to divide both sides by 100, since we're trying to isolate the variable A. And we're going to find that A is equal to 525. So that is only part 1 of this problem. That is just the amount that it is increasing by. So I'm going to do part 2 in a moment. But let's take a look at how this would look if I set it up using an equation. If I was going to use an equation, we're going to do A is equal to the percent as a decimal, so 0.35 35 hundredths, multiplied by 1,500. And now when I do 35 hundredths times 1,500, you're actually going to get that amount that it's changing by right away. We're going to get 525. As I mentioned already, that is not my final answer. That is just the amount that it's changing by. So to find my final answer, I need to take my 1,500, the people that we started with. We're going to add, because it was increased, by 525 people. Again, that's my 35% it was increased by, to find out that the final value, the final amount, the final number of people in this case, is going to be 2,025. So we got 2,025 people. So that would be my final answer on that question. So again, we're going to solve these in 2 steps. We're going to figure out, again, the amount that it's actually changing by, and then either add if it's increased, or like on number 2 here, we're going to subtract if it's decreased. So let's take a look at number 2. So we got 8,250 yards decreased by 7%. Again, if we go through and identify, the W is our starting value, and then 7% would be our percent, right? So that's the amount that it's changing by. Again, I'll set up a proportion so that we can see how that looks, remind ourselves how the percent proportion looks, and then we'll also have the equation that we can use as well. So this is going to say A over 8,250 equals our percent, 7 over 100. If I was going to do the equation, you would have A equals 0.07, so 700ths, multiplied by the 8,250. And again, once you do that multiplication, you're going to get your answer right away, so I'll write that in just a moment. On the other side here, back to the proportion, if we do our cross products, you're going to have 100 times A, 8,250 times 7. So if we do 100 times A, that's going to be 100A. If we do 8,250 times 7, that is going to be 57,750. And then we have one more step to solve this proportion, which is to divide both sides by 100. And then we end up with an answer of 577 and 5/10, or 577 and a half. Again, if I did my equation, you would end up with the same exact answer, but you only have to do one step instead of, cross products and divide. But either method gets you the same amount that it's changing by. Now, in this problem, it is being decreased. So our starting value, again, of 8,250 is being decreased. So we're going to subtract the amount that it changed by, so 577 and a half, and then that's going to be my final answer. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see students make with this is that they just don't pay attention to whether it's an increase or a decrease. So don't let that be the mistake you make. Make sure, maybe you have to highlight that decreased or increased, so that way you're doing that right operation. Because a lot of students know how to do that first step of finding the amount that it's changing by. They just make the mistake of not knowing if it's adding or subtracting because we're just not paying attention to what's worded in the problem. So finishing out number 2, subtracting, because again it was decreased, we're going to get an answer of 7,672 and a half, and then yards would be our label. So there's 2 examples that you're probably going to see, very similar ones when you're asked to find the new amount after a percent change. The other types of examples we can see are going to be markups and discounts. And I wanted to word it that way with these problems that you see here. And you're going to see these same types of problems again when you specifically work in your lesson with markups and discounts and markdowns. And so these are the same thing as a percent increase or a percent decrease. They're just not worded the same way as we saw in the previous question. But we could easily word number 3, we could easily say $70 increased by 20%. On number 4, we could say $178 decreased by 40%. But instead, we start seeing those phrases that are relating to what's actually happening. The price is being marked down or the price is being marked up. So I'm going to only use the equation for these 2 just because then we can do it in one step. Like I said, if you need to see the proportion again, go back and rewatch those first 2 examples and how we set up those proportions and solved it. These can also be solved with a proportion. I'm just using the equation because it is quicker. So $70 marked up by 20%. So again, our W value is our starting value, and then our percent is obviously the one that has the percent sign on it. And so when I do my equation here, we're going to do A is equal to our percent as a decimal. So I'm just going to write it as 2/10. You also could write it as 20 hundredths. And then we're multiplying that by 70. So when I do that math there, I'm going to end up with an answer of 14. This now again is the amount that this price is being marked up. So I have one more step, which is to take again my starting value, which in this case was 70. Since it's being marked up, we're going to add 14 to that and find out that our final price is $84. Number 4, very similar. We have our starting value, which is going to be represented as W in our equation. It is being marked down 40%. So 40%, that is our percentage. And so when I set up my equation, A equals P times W. So A equals 40% as a decimal, so 4/10 or 40 hundredths. And then that's going to be multiplied by 178. When I do that multiplication there, we're going to get 71 and 2/10. And again, that is the amount that it is being discounted. Money is okay to have decimal places. You can go out to 2 decimal places with money. Sometimes it throws off my students when they don't get a whole answer. It's definitely okay with money. So we're going to be doing $178 minus the 71 and 2/10. To find out that our discounted price, so essentially after a 40% discount, we would be paying $106.80. So there's some examples, again, on finding the new amount after a percent change. I hope that helped you out. Make sure you check out those other percent videos if you still need help with your percents unit. Thanks for watching.